So I want to talk about how to have intimate relationships. And I want to say it's almost next to impossible to have an intimate relationship with someone if you don't develop and cultivate an intimate relationship with your own dark side. And dark, I don't mean horrible or dirty or scary. I just mean that part of us that hasn't been well developed. We can call that part the unconscious as opposed to the conscious. We can call that part the shadow. Whatever we want to call it, it's that part of us that is wide and deep and soulful. It just hasn't been looked into, and that's where all of our feelings are and all of our private thoughts are, our sexual wishes are. And I'm here, Dr. Doug is here to talk to you about how you can first get much more familiar and friendly with your own dark side or your own disavowed feelings first, or as you are learning how to be in partnership intimately with another person. Because I'm going to tell you, the minute you start getting close to someone, all of those bubble feelings from underground, whether it's from childhood or teenagehood or what have you, all those feelings about mother and father and being misunderstood or not being loved or being taken for granted or being exploited or being used, all of that material is going to come up and bubble up on the surface of your consciousness, and it's going to intersect with the person you're having intimate relations. So it's going to be very, very confusing to distinguish if your intimate partner is causing this and being a jerk, or if those feelings are yours and are coming up from all of that repressed and suppressed material from your whole life that hasn't been addressed. I'm here, Dr. Doug is here to talk to you about how important it is to learn how to start tracking and recording and learning how to work with those darker feelings. That's what you would get in psychotherapy. The therapist would help you track each feeling state in the session, how you have it with your friends, how you have it with your families, and how you could develop a whole hovering attention that looks and addresses and tracks what you are feeling in your heart, so you're not taken by surprise when you feel a certain type of way. Feelings of hurt, feelings of sadness, feelings of being upset, feelings of being angry, feelings of feeling ashamed. Those are the big building blocks of our feeling life, and our darker feeling life that most of us have learned very little fluency in. I want to also tell you that this is like learning a new language or playing a musical instrument. There's no way you can sit down at the piano and play a Beethoven Moonlight Sonata from scratch. It takes practice and discipline and rigor. The same thing with a foreign language. I know we all want to go to Europe and speak French or Spanish or Italian, but you have to learn it step by step to become increasingly more fluent. Same thing with feelings. So I'm here to teach you how to be patient, gracious with yourself, and give you some tips about what to do. So let's take a look at Mark and Amber. They worked together all day, but each of them was feeling a certain type of way. When Amber was with Mark in the mall and they were looking at things to buy, it looked to Amber that Mark was looking and checking out some other women. And she started to feel maybe a little hurt, maybe a little ashamed because she felt a little overweight, maybe even a little scared, and then immediately she went into a whole big fantasy that he was a cheater and a liar. That's because she was having a certain type of feeling. She didn't breathe and get grounded with it. Her mind created a story as a defense or a leap away from the feeling. So important to be able to track the feelings, because that's how we get grounded. And Mark was feeling a certain type of way because when he went to reach for Amber's hand, she pulled away. She didn't mean anything by it. She just actually had to scratch her chin. But he went all over the place that she didn't like him. She wasn't attracted to him. He himself felt a little too skinny and was feeling maybe he was undesirable. His mind went into all kinds of places. But the truth of the matter is that a little young part of him felt a little hurt and injured. That's it. But he didn't know what to do with that feeling of hurt and injured because those feelings were inaccessible to him. He felt it for a quick little second, then bam, went into his head, into a story. That's the problem with our relationship with feelings, because the therapist hasn't taught us, or someone like me hasn't taught you, or you haven't taught yourself how to have your basic feelings You feel them for a quick second, and then you jump to a big conclusion, to something catastrophic, to something awfulizing. That's how we get ourselves in a heck of a lot of trouble. So very important to learn how to work with the unconscious, the darker feelings, the shadow, whatever you want to call it, so that you can get much more aware of what's going on for you. Here's another example. So Mark was talking a mile a minute about some book he was reading, and he was feeling as if Amber wasn't paying attention to what he was saying, and he started getting irritated with her and wanted to bark at her that she wasn't paying attention. But he didn't do that. He suppressed it. Amber thought that Mark was talking a little too much on their third date, and she started feeling a little impatient or aggravated or frustrated, but she wasn't even aware of it. Neither of them was really aware of what they were feeling. Anytime they felt a feeling, it went into a thought, and then they suppressed it and they pushed it all down because they just so wanted to have a really nice day together. They were attracted. They had met. This was their third date. They were in the Garden of Eden. But here's the problem. Because they weren't listening to their feelings and tracking them, because the feelings were going into thoughts, and then the thoughts were suppressed, they didn't do any work together. They didn't do any work, and it exploded later at night. So the key thing, actually, here's the challenge. The challenge in human life, it seems to me as a therapist and an activist and an artist, is that even when we're having a really, really good time, we want to do some work. We want to be conscious of what we're not conscious of. We want to check in and see what our dark side is doing, because that's where the child lives. That's where the sacred lives. That's where our divinity lives, believe it or not. I'll talk to you about that in future YouTube videos. So we want to do everything we can to do a little bit of work. And what that work is I'm going to go over that with you. 10 simple steps. The 10 steps of getting more connected to your dark side in an intimate way are: step number 1. Just realize that you have a dark side and an unconscious. Believe it or not, just say hi to it. When you're with a person, when you're going to the restroom, when you're just walking by the way, tune into yourself and just say hi to your unconscious or to your dark side. Step number 2 is to realize that as you are saying hi, you are actually opening up your heart chakra. You are starting to become more connected. As a human being, this is the beginning of your healing and your maturation. Allow that opening to take place. Step number 3, you will become more open by tuning into your body, your breath, and noticing your anxiety. So take some conscious breaths. Tap different parts of your body just privately to yourself and listen to see where the anxiety is in your chest or your belly. That's the beginning of getting out of your head into your body and starting to become more friends to the unconscious and to your dark. Step number 4 is, as you're calming down, you might actually notice that you have actually a lot of anxiety. You were unaware of it, but now as you tune in, you realize actually you're a bundle of anxiety. Don't think about what you're anxious about. More important is just be aware of the anxiety as if it were electricity in your body and start to self-soothe. See if by breathing you could calm your nervous system down ever so. Step number 5, as you're calming your anxiety down, you may notice actually that there's some big emotions there. The big emotion may be powerful hurt, or some big shame, how dare you have the hurt, or even some anger at what's happened all day that, let's say, you haven't been listened to. You want to be really careful with those big emotions. That's why we've all been numb and shut down, because the emotions are actually scary without the help of a therapist. So your job is just to notice them, try to ground them in your body, and let yourself know it's okay to have raw emotions. That might calm you down. Step number 6 is notice the triggers. It's very important to begin to track how you got triggered throughout the day. It's almost as if you could write in your little phone journal, step number 1, when she didn't listen to what I was saying. Step number 2, when she pulled her hand away. Step number 3, when she didn't actually respond to a question I was asking her. And then you'll start to see with each trigger, you started to get increasingly more angry or sad or hurt and ashamed. And by noticing the triggers, believe it or not, I believe it will calm you down and give you that missing empathy for yourself that you need to have, that tells you it's okay to have your reactions. You don't need to judge them or second guess them. The triggers will help you have empathy. As you realize you're being triggered, it's so important to push away the inner roommate who's telling you you're being a baby and being oversensitive for being triggered. It's so important that you give yourself permission to feeling triggered and just not doing anything about it but that. Step number 8 is imagine that the person being triggered is a little child inside of you, is a little child who's very, very sensitive. What would you say to the little child? You wouldn't say, oh, you're being a baby, or grow up, I hope not, or snap out of it. You would sit down next to that child, put your hand around that child, and just give that child some safety, some soothing, and some comfort. What you're doing here is you're beginning, as you're working with your dark side and your unconscious, being able to learn how to be a good parent to those feelings as if they were your children, and as if you, and as if you're learning how to be a good parent to those feelings as if they were your little children and as if you were their parent, so you can together heal the split between the two apples in the Garden of Eden, and those feelings can be felt, contained, and empowered because the parent, you, the adult, is listening. Step number 9 is I want to give you permission not to bring any of this up with your partner during the day. It may not be time. You may not have yet the method of how to metabolize everything you've done in your private little journal during the date or in the back of your mind, because you're taking really good care of yourself now to talk to your intimate partner about that. That's a whole other YouTube and a whole other lesson. More important, as I said in the beginning, is how can you develop an intimate partnership, first of all, with your own feeling life and your own dark side, and get much more fluent between the conscious and the unconscious. As you do that work, you're going to actually learn what's called self-soothing, which is all of your triggers are real and can be addressed. It may not be the time to bring them up. You might need to talk to Dr. Doug or talk to your therapist first about how you translate your internal work to your intimate partner so that it works and creates relationship rather than rupture it. Step number 10, the final step, is now that you've done all of this work, and believe it or not, it's really possible to do so. I'm going to talk to you in future videos about how to get even more facile about how to do it, and what does it mean to keep a feeling journal. It's so important to keep a journal. It's so important to keep a journal. But the last step, which is also really important, is I want to give you permission to close the circle and to say goodbye to the dark side and the unconscious for now, because you've done a lot of work, and we shouldn't do everything all at once, which we learn in psychotherapy, little bits at a time. So tell your unconscious or your dark side or your shadow, whatever you want to call it, that you appreciated making better friends with them. They may also let you know through a lift in mood that they feel good that you started to make a relationship with that person. And then at that point, you're much more connected. You're much more bonded. It's time to say goodbye for now. We'll get back to each other later on. I think you feel much more settled getting back into the day. This is how to do the inner internal work that is your responsibility, believe it or not, to do, so that we can evolve, we can grow, we can have sex, we can make love, we can go into these relationships with both the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, all together with both the conscious and the unconscious, the light side and the dark side, and work with our darker feelings so we become friends with them and much more familiar. So don't forget to ask me any questions you have. I'm here for you. I know this is difficult. This is hard because it's new, but I think as you practice, you'll get better and better. And I want to talk to you also if you find that you're feeling some resistance to it, if you feel it's kind of dumb, or you can't do that during a date, or you haven't really gotten the hang of how to journal or do some self-reflection when you're with another person. There might be real reasons for that, which is hard to pull away from the relationship in your own mind to reflect. That's a whole other video and a whole other lesson. I'm going to talk to you about why it might be difficult. I'm going to talk to you about why it might be difficult. But for today, just try some 10 steps, as I told you. Don't forget to check in with me to see how you're doing. If you're real curious about it in the future, don't forget, ask Dr. Doug.